Hi, everyone. Welcome back to She Boys Podcast. Today's guest is Nora Wendel. Hi, Nora.
Hey,
Welcome to my podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
yeah, coming live all the way from Bali, Indonesia.
Wow, and that's one of the places I want to visit. So, Nora Nora is an author and a coach. So, can you tell our listeners what inspired you to get into coaching?
Well, it came from my personal life experience of having a panic attack when I was 24 and then anxiety for 9.5 years, chronic anxiety where I just didn't feel comfortable being myself, being alone. I had this idea that if I was alone, I was going to get another panic attack. And so I was like really clingy, particularly onto men. And I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't trust myself. I didn't like enjoy who I was, or I had social anxiety. I had all of these things, and so it took 9.5 years for me to really look at the core issue of why didn't I feel comfortable being myself or trust myself. And so I know anxiety is a huge, huge like dis-ease that we have, particularly women, because we have this thing of like comparing ourselves and not feeling good enough about ourselves. And I felt that for so long. And what happened was I became a photographer first when I moved to Bali, and I was capturing women in like waterfalls and the rice fields and like their raw elements. And the women were coming back to me and saying, wow, this is the most confident I've felt about myself in years. And then they had these beautiful photographs to show. And after about 3 years of doing that, I was just like, there's something around this feedback I'm getting around. They're feeling really good about themselves. And then I started to coach online because I was based in Bali. You had to be in Bali to do a photo shoot with me. Then I was like, well, let me take this online and coach the same kind of principles that I took the women through when I was doing a photo shoot with them, on how to get in touch with who they really are and feel comfortable sharing and expressing their, sexuality, their sensuality, like who they wanted to be in the moment. And then this then brought me to write my book. And so my book's here. It's called Confident, Sexy, and Wildly Free. And it's how to own your worth, ditch the self-doubt, and not give a if I can swear, fuck what other people think of you. And this book is it's like a playbook, I call it, because there's journaling questions, there's meditations, there's, practices that I ask you to do. So it comes with a whole digital website where you have all these bonus resources, and it takes you through the process that I went through in order to become confident, sexy, and wildly free with who I was. So it's highly recommended if you want to read this and start looking at, well, why am I not feeling comfortable being myself and in my body? Because this is me and this is who I am. So how do I get in touch with the freedom that I long for?
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So within your book, it tells your story of how you got, like how you overcame that, because I've spoken to a lot of women and a lot of people, including myself, who have that kind of self-doubt and stuff with men and within themselves and stuff like. So within your book, it tells your story of how you overcame that.
Yeah, it's like my stories interwoven with like tools and practices and ideas and concepts to get more in touch with yourself. And because anxiety is actually like, it's a symptom, it's a surface level symptom. So we have to look, well, what's underneath that really? Like, what is your biggest fear that's creating these anxious thoughts around yourself, which is where self-doubt comes in, right? The inner critic, or how you judge yourself. Like I used to have that so bad. It was so loud. She was like screaming at me, you can't do this, don't do this, you're not good enough, right? And so it's like, how do I come to terms with that? And so my book, yes, it's my story, but it's interwoven with like learning around who you can be, and then to embody that, because it's okay to read and like get the ideas, but how do you feel it, right? How do you actually feel it for yourself? And so that's what my whole book is. And that's why I have a whole like website full of digital resources, so that you can be like, okay, I get the idea. Now, how do I feel it in my heart and in my body? How do I feel confidence in my body? Like, I get that I can be confident, but I don't feel it, right? So there's that gap. And that's what I love to teach the women that I work with, is like feminine embodiment. So confidence embodiment. That's, yeah, one of my favorite topics.
I love that. I love that because I feel like speaking with a lot of women, they usually judge themselves based on what other people think of them. That's my biggest flaw too. Like I'm like, what would this person say if I wore, this skirt that's a little bit shorter than knee high, or these heels that's a little bit higher. Like usually that's how I am. That's why I don't go out dressed out really nice. And my mom's like, well, you need to. Who cares what other people think? And I'm like, I don't want to look good because I don't want them to judge me and say anything to me. And she's like, well, forget them. Like, well, she don't say forget them. She said the word. But yeah.
Yeah, so you see, that's a great example of like, you get the idea that I shouldn't care what people think of me, but you do care, right? And so it's like, that's where that cognitive dissonance comes in. So I'm like a total neuroscience nerd. I love studying the brain and neuroplasticity, and like, because everything is a feeling, everything's energy, and energy is also, a thought is also just a simple energy. And so like, how do you create a new neural pathway in your brain to feel differently? And so I work a lot with NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, feminine embodiment practices. So it really comes back into the body. And I can tell you right now, somewhere along your life, usually in your childhood, someone told you it wasn't okay to be you, and it wasn't okay to wear that. It wasn't okay to express yourself in that way. And so you registered that in your brain, and it's keeping you safe. Okay, that it's like, no, it's keeping me safe, because we all fear rejection. We all fear being abandoned. We fear the loss of potential love. And every single human being on this planet wants to be loved for who they are. And we actually do everything in our lives in order to protect the idea that we will be loved, which means we reject parts of ourselves that we actually do want to express. And so I do a lot of work with childhood experiences, because that's where it starts. From 0 to 7 age is where we create our identity on who we think we should be. And it's so heavily influenced by our parents, the environment we grew up in at home. And so I can tell you right now, somewhere along the line in your childhood, someone said, nope, it's not okay to be that way. And then you've still got that in your brain, and your inner critic is now like, they're going to judge me. They're going to judge me. Oh my God, I can't wear that, right? And so you then shut that part of yourself down. But in reality, it's just leading to a little bit more unhappiness and frustration. Because if you could actually go out and just be you, like wearing the short skirt, wearing the heels or the lipstick, whatever you wanted to, excuse me, you just be like, wow, I feel free.
Yes, that's what my mom said. Like it sounds just like my mom. She's like, when you're just going to the grocery store and you wear like these nice jeans and your makeup on and your hair done, like you never know who might approach you, and you want to feel good when you go out, even if you're just going to the grocery store. Like feel good, look good, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I'm like wearing sweatpants and a baggy shirt and a sweatshirt. She's like, no, go back upstairs. So yeah, I definitely understand exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I'm
But
sure many women out there do too, because like I had the same issue, right? Now I knew if I had anxiety and like self-doubt and all of this lack of confidence, then it wasn't only me, right? And this is why I then decided to coach and mentor women online to feel, ultimately their feminine freedom, just to be themselves, to live in radiance and joy every single day, to feel the self-love. And again, that self-love is a huge term, because you see it online everywhere, self-love, and then you're like, yeah, but I don't feel it.
yeah, definitely. Like I was giving advice to my coworker. I was like, you have to love yourself. And I'm like giving her all this advice, and I'm like, why aren't I taking that advice? Like I'm giving her good advice and I'm not taking the advice. And she's like, well, what about you? And I'm like, I'll do it. So what is one of your biggest challenges you've helped one of your clients through?
I help a lot of clients go through, like, I call it heart junk from previous relationships that kind of clogs their heart, and they really want a relationship. So I work with single women, and then I work with women in relationships. So the single women are like, why can't I find a man? Or I'm attracting toxic men, or like the men always ghost me. And so we really look at their beliefs around love and men, and how it's impacting how they show up out there. And so a lot of women come to me with heartbreak. I can't forget him, or he's still there. Why am I still thinking of him? And so we help clear that out so that they can welcome in the kind of man that they truly want. But it's really interesting to note you attract a partner or man who is there to show you where you still need to clear out your heart junk, which is why sometimes you have repetitive partners or men who are similar in their habits or what they do or how they show up for you. Like, maybe you attract narcissists who always put you down. Maybe, because your brain is trying to heal those wounds that you have. And once you know that, it's really interesting. So the majority of the work I do, I'm like, well, what are your childhood wounds around love? Because we all have unmet emotional and physical needs from childhood. There's 20 emotional, physical needs, and not one person can give you all 20. And so we experience a form of loss, and any form of loss equals trauma. So you can have big trauma or you can have small trauma. And if you don't process that, you create emotional scars, and then you'll go around thinking, men don't love me, or I'm not worthy of a relationship, or what's another really big belief? All men just use me, right? So I work with women who have all these kind of beliefs, and we slowly unravel them and then teach them, okay, no, well, how do you want to be and what do you want to believe instead? And then for women in relationships, I work with a lot of women who have sexual intimacy problems in their relationships, or it's like mismatched sexual drives. They're feeling a lot of pressure, or they're not getting enough from their man. Their men may be emotionally shut down and they're not understanding it, so they turn into like critical women. And so I teach them how to rearrange the relationship dynamics so that they can have a secure and passionate, healthy, adventurous, sexy relationship.
I love that. I love that. And a lot of people, like, they try to change their partner. They're like, well, I don't like it that you wear this. I don't like it that you have these tattoos and these piercings. And I'm like, you knew that I had these in the beginning. So, like, why try to change it? Like, why? I don't know. I'm like, why do people do that? I just want to understand.
Well, a lot of people fall in love with potential, okay? And what happens is we make lists, okay? So this is one of the things I do with my single women, and actually with women in relationships too. I'm like, well, what's your ideal relationship? What's your ideal man? And be very clear. And every time you go on a date or have an experience, it teaches you what you do want or what you don't want. So it's always helping you navigate towards what you do want to create, even if it's an experience that you're like, I never want to have that again, right? But you're like, okay, well, you don't want to have that. Well, what's the opposite of that? Because that's what you do want. So every single experience is helping you navigate towards getting clearer in your desires, whether that's in the relationship or with men. And then you create these lists. And then what happens is you meet a man and you're like, yes, tick, tick, tick. Oh, none of these. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to ignore all of these and these are fine. Okay, and then your list becomes flexible. But that then you're like dating a potential, because actually you do want all those other things at the list. Because maybe you're like, I want a man with no kids, but he has kids. And you're like, oh, it's fine, he has kids. But actually, down the line, you're going to be like, oh, I wish he didn't have kids. And I don't feel seen because he's always with his kids, right? It causes these issues and problems. And so I'm always with the single women. I'm like, you have your list. And why do you make your list flexible? No, this is what you desire. Why are you not allowing yourself to have exactly what you want? And that then becomes the issue, So I'm like, go on dates, go and do this. And I teach women how to have fun dates, because a lot of the women are like, I'm so fed up, right? I hate this dating game. And it's like the online dating trap. It's like, you're lonely. You're like, okay, I'll go on the app. You put your profile, you chat to a few men, you meet it. You're like, oh, this sucks. And it goes around. You're like, then you delete the app, and then you're like, oh, a couple months later, you're like, okay, I'll go on the app again. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling ready. And it goes round and round and round.
That's so exactly my life. Like, you are saying exactly what I've been doing. I'm like, man, how does she know what I've been doing? But yeah, that's a cycle. And wow. Wow. I'm like shocked that you know this. Because that's exactly what is going on. Like, wow. To a T though. And I'm like, because the men, like, for some reason, it's like our generation of men, they don't really want to. They say they don't want to spend money on us. Like, they don't want to take us out on dates. What if it's not a good date and they wasted their money on us? Like, I have not been out on a date in like 8-9 years. But yeah, a lot of guys do not want to spend money. So how do you like like how do you weed out the bad ones?
Yeah, well,
Without meddling.
yeah. So I have this 3-month inner development program for single ladies, and it's called the School of Feminine Magnetism. And it's actually launching again end of November. Any single ladies, if you want to understand more about your trauma and your loss and your emotional scars, okay, how to get out of the online dating trap. The thing is that you have to look at your beliefs, because your beliefs govern what you see. And I talk about it in terms of neuroscience, okay? You have a little area of your brain which is called RES, reticular activating system, and it filters out information that's coming in from our environment, okay? But because you have to think about how much information is coming in, okay? Our brain has to be able to filter it, otherwise it's going to be an overload. And so your belief system and how you think is the filtering system, and it gets activated through the RES switch, okay? Which means if you have a belief that there's no men out there for you, well, then that's the filter is going to filter that for you, and you won't be able to see any men out there. It's the same thing. A great example is you want to buy, you know, a yellow car. You know, you want to buy the, I don't know what the new car, I have a scooter here and motorcycles here. We don't really drive cars in Bali, but it's like you want to buy a yellow car, and then all of a sudden, because now it's in your mind and you're like, I want to buy that car, right? Now all of a sudden your reticular activating system is switched on to yellow cars, and then you see yellow cars everywhere, right? You wanted to buy that BMW. It's so true. And so that's how the filtration system works. And that's the same when you want to be in a relationship or men. So if you've got this belief that, you know, I'm not worthy for men to pay for me, right? You might have a belief like this, or, you know, men are stingy, or, you know, maybe you have a belief around I have to be independent around men. And so then you're attracting the men who, you know, are filtering through your system, and you don't see all the other good guys out there who actually do want to pay for you and be there for you, because you're so focused on following the men who are actually not going to pay for you or show up for you. And so I teach a lot of neuroscience-based things, because ultimately our brain is how we function, right? Our brain is our control center for the rest of our bodies. And so when you understand how your brain functions, it just becomes so clear in your patterns and habits, and then how can you change that? And so that's why my program is 3 months, because in the first month we really look at, well, what are your woundings? What are your beliefs? How do you feel about yourself? And then month number 2 is understanding, okay, well, how do you become confident? How do you feel in your full femininity? And then month 3 is like, all right, now let's go dating, and let's, you know, experiment with what we've learned, and how do you create a healthy relationship? What are your boundaries? What are your red flags in relationships? And then you create this manual for yourself at the end of the 3 months, where you really have this clarity on who you want. Okay, you've worked on your confidence, your femininity, you feel really good about yourself, and then you're month 3, you're going on dates, you're checking men out, and everything is just leading you to more and more clarity of like, nope, 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 yes, nope, maybe, okay. But because you feel good about yourself, you're not going down that online dating trap or this wormhole of like, oh, again, a man said no to me. You're like, okay, thank you, next. Actually, no, I don't want to go on another date with you, because, you know, I'm feeling good about myself, and you didn't show up in the way that I actually really desire. And that's okay. You're a great person, but you're not what I'm looking for. And you can only come from that space when you feel good about yourself.
Yes, that's amazing advice. That's really amazing. So, I want to thank you so much, Nora, for coming on my podcast today and chatting with me.
You're welcome.
You have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, I want to thank you all so much for listening to my interview with Nora. She has like really, really, really great advice and information. Like, I am completely shocked. I'm definitely going to join her class or course, because I don't know about you ladies, but I need the help. Just saying. But anyway, if you would like to go on her website, purchase her book, and see what courses and classes she has going on these upcoming months, then you can go on my website. It's sheblurbs.wixsite.com/sheblurbs/podcast, and you can go to Nora's page, and on her page I've linked her website. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so, so much for supporting my podcast. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. Make great choices. Bye.